Corsair's K100 is jam-packed full of features, and for £230, it damn well better be. It's a flagship keyboard at a flagship price, so let's take a look at those new shiny features and see if it's actually worth your £230 of cold hard cash. But first, if you haven't already, consider subscribing for more videos like this one every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. So what's new? Well, quite a lot. The key switches are now Corsair's optical ones. It also has a new controller with Axon technology that allows for a 4000 Hz polling rate. We also have a Corsair iCUE control wheel dial. The G keys on the left side of the keyboard can now be Elgato Stream Deck keys, just not in the way you're hoping for. And it has plenty more RGB, as you might expect. So, that sounds interesting. Let's take a look at it, starting with those switches. Corsair call these OPX. They're essentially Cherry MX speed switches with even less travel distance, a higher actuation point, and use laser beams. Well, it's not really laser beams, it's an infrared beam that the key switch breaks when you press down on it, but laser beam sounds more cool. Now, the way they've gone about making these optical switches is effectively the basic route. Essentially all it is an infrared beam that the key switch physically blocks the path of, and that's what registers as a key press. Instead of using something like the switch style that Woosing use, which is a series of mirrors and separated sensors and LEDs effectively, to give extra functionality like having multiple actions per key press or even adjustable actuation points, that's not something we can expect from this. We can't expect a firmware update, for example, to allow things like adjustable actuation points, as that will be fixed based on where the beam is. You can think of these as essentially just normal Cherry MX speeds that are even more highly tuned and slightly faster to actuate. And that's fine, except for the fact that I really don't like Cherry MX speed switches, and so this is not a very enjoyable experience for me, especially because they're now even shorter travel distance, even higher actuation points on top of the already incredibly light feel with zero tactile feedback. And so for me, this keyboard isn't, my personal preference. I would much rather have Cherry MX brown switches every day of the week. But if you like Cherry MX Speed Silver switches, I think you'll like this even better. Now, moving on to the new controller, that's fairly interesting. Corsair say it's based on their own Axon hyper-processing technology with a system on chip running a real-time operating system. Which all sounds pretty fancy, and for a keyboard controller, it definitely is. But to give you an idea, it's basically an off-the-shelf ARM chip that's not custom to Corsair, that Corsair haven't designed themselves, and it's running an existing real-time operating system that has been heavily customized to allow for this 4000 Hz polling rate. That all pretty much makes sense, especially since Razer are now offering an 8000 Hz mouse, at least, an engineering sample that I got to check out. So if you're interested in seeing this, check out that video. It'll be linked to the cards up above. And I explain a bit more about polling rates, what that actually is, why you would want an 8000 or 4000 Hz peripheral, so do check that one out for a bit more of a detailed explanation. Now, the main reason that you would want higher polling rate peripherals like keyboards and mice is a reduction in input lag. Basically, the time that it takes from you pressing a key to your system actually registering that. Corsair claim that a standard or a performance gaming keyboard can take 2 to 3 milliseconds to register a key press, which sounds about right considering that most performance gaming keyboards have a polling rate of 1000 Hz and normally have to debounce the switches, and so that can take 1 to 2 milliseconds on its own, whereas Corsair's new board can do it in 0.5 to 0.75 milliseconds, which again pretty much makes sense. Now, the argument I made in the mouse video for a reduction in input lag being a fairly big deal doesn't hold up quite as well for a keyboard, since it's fairly unusual that you pressing a key on your keyboard will have a few milliseconds faster, will have a significant performance impact in game, you not dying, but a reduction in input lag is always good. So that's the revolutionary stuff, but what about the evolutionary? Well, the first thing is the iCUE control wheel. This is an interesting idea. Basically, it is a notched rotary dial with an LED in the middle that, depending on what color the LED is, will depend on what action you can do with it. There are a number of different fixed actions in iCUE software that you can enable or disable, and you can even map custom macros to each rotation if you want to, although the actions that are there do seem fairly useful, but honestly I'm not quite sure. The one that I ended up using the most was track jogging in Spotify, but realistically, I don't know how often I would actually use that. The other thing to note is that because you have to memorize what color means what from the software, it's a little bit difficult to get used to, and it does take some time, and you'll probably just leave it on one action that you use the most, which again is fine, but if it happened to have, say, an Elgato screen button in the middle instead, that would be a lot more useful. And speaking of the Elgato screens, sadly that is not what accompanies the left-hand side of the keyboard. It is the standard macro keys that you would find on the K95, for example. Those are still plenty fine, they're still plenty usable, and you can still map those in iCUE to any macros or keyboard presses or whatever else you want to do. But the new thing is that you can now install Elgato's Stream Deck control sensor and map Elgato Stream Deck commands to those buttons. Now, of course, they don't have screens on them, so you can't tell what is what, you would just have to memorize them, but even having things like being able to mute volumes depending on what application you're in, or say change scenes on the fly, just have them fixed, that's a really nice extra bonus feature to have available. Of course, if you're willing to spend £230 on a keyboard, you probably are willing to spend a few more quid on an actual Stream Deck, but again, more functionality is pretty much always better. With that said, when said functionality ends up costing you more money and doesn't end up being quite as useful as you maybe hoped it would be, well, it gets a little bit hard to recommend. Don't get me wrong, this is a fantastic keyboard, and if you were to buy one, I am fairly certain you'd be very happy with your purchase, but I couldn't help but feeling like there could be some things that they could have improved about this to make it a legitimately impressive high-end flagship keyboard. Like even little things like including extra keycaps for the G keys that are blank so that you can draw on them or put stickers on them to show what you've mapped them to in Elgato Stream Deck. Or if they wanted to go all out, putting actual Elgato Stream Deck buttons on the side, even things like including their iCUE Nexus built into the top of the keyboard instead of it being a £90 optional extra would have made it feel legitimately premium and legitimately worth the £230 price tag, but as it stands, it's certainly not bad, but I think it could have been a little bit better. Personally, I'm way too much of a Cherry MX Brown fanboy to ever let go of one of those keyboards, and even if I did, it would be to swap to the Wutang 2 because the functionality they offer is phenomenal, so this won't be my next gaming keyboard, but I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. What do you think of this? Would this be better suited to you? Do you like Cherry MX Speed Silver switches? And what do you think of the new features and functionality that this offers? Does it justify the price tag? Let me know in those comments down below. Now, if you want to check out the K100 and see pricing when and where you watch this, because it can and does vary, I will leave a link to it in the description down below. That'll be an Amazon affiliate link that will take you to your local Amazon store where you can see all that good stuff. Although do bear in mind this is going up basically when the keyboard launches, so pricing may, the listings on Amazon might not be there yet, so bear with them on that one. Either way, that's pretty much it for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments down below. There's going to be a whole load of other links in the description you can check out if you want to support the channel. There's merch or hoodies or t-shirts like this one, or a load of other cool designs. There's Patreon for ad-free videos and you can support me directly, or other affiliate links to people like Overclock UK too. There's also going to be some more videos over there you can check out, maybe the Wutang 2 since I've been raving on that one. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video.